Hey y'all, Aaron Michael here. So I just shared a video, Facebook Live, and then I jumped on a class that I teach or that I co-teach and then headed to worship practice. And when I got back after worship practice, I had a lot of messages from people saying that the testimony that I shared really, healed them, touched them, was exactly what they needed to hear, and all of that stuff. And so I realized I should probably be sharing it on this YouTube channel as well. And yes, the testimony is about some stuff that I overcame and how the Lord healed me after a pretty violent assault, an incredibly violent assault actually. And then how he healed me of the trauma of some betrayals that took place afterward. And I just wanted to make very, very clear that the betrayals and whatnot that took place at the church that I was attending at the time, I want you to understand, I want everyone to understand that I hold no ill will in my heart toward the people at that church, toward the leadership, towards the congregation, nothing like that. I have nothing but love in my heart for them and want nothing but the best for them. His weird little hair sticking up. Anyway, and so I wanted to make that clear. I wanted to be sure that people understand that I intentionally don't name the church. I intentionally don't name the pastor because that's not what's important. It's not important, who, what, where, when, blah, blah, type stuff. It's important what happened and what the Lord did with it and how he used it and how he healed me and how he was glorified through it. And also I have reached out to the leadership and let them know that I will be sharing the testimonies, and that because I love them and because I have zero ill will toward them, I don't, use names or, things like that, because it's not about, oh, shame on you. It's about, glorifying what Yahweh did through those things. So anyway, I just want to be sure that that is always clear, that my goal is never to shame others. It's never to say, oh, these garbage people. That's not what, what this ministry is about. Anyway, so I just wanted to be sure that that was totally clear before jumping into the video. Also, there's some other really awesome stuff in the video too, about discernment and understanding how to dig deeper before releasing words sometimes, because sometimes the first thing we see, we don't always have clarity on. So it's important to understand before we release certain things to people. So anyway, love y'all. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the video. I hope that it blesses you. Bless y'all. Hey guys, long time no see, or a long time no live, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, what's up? It's Aaron Michael. I just wanted to jump on and talk to y'all about some things. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is courage. Sometimes we think that courage is about not ever being, oh, what's up, Stevie? Anyway, sometimes we think that courage is about not ever being anxious or, never, being uncomfortable or any of that stuff. But that's not true. Courage is about doing what you know the Lord's telling you to do, even in those moments where you're trembling. And knowing that if he's called you to do something, regardless of what's, going on the outside or whatever, that he's told you to do it. And so you're going to do it because, you have faith in him, and that faith in him overrides all the other stuff. Anyway, and I say that, the reason that I kind of start this out that way is because, as you can tell, my hands are a little shaky right now. Like, you see that? My hands are literally trembling right now. Why? Because as I was getting ready to come on, I'm having all these thoughts of, oh, what about this? What if that? What if this? Type stuff. And I want to encourage you guys, when those things come, pay attention to what it is that feeling is telling you to do. Oh, interesting. It says that my live is interrupted. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys, are y'all still there? Because clearly this is something I'm supposed to be releasing right now. Okay, Nick Montague, I'm seeing all your hearts. So does that mean I'm coming through loud and clear? All right, so in that case, I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, and there might be some interference on this, and if there is, that's okay. I'm really not worried about it because I'm not gonna, hold back. I'm not gonna stop, regardless of what the adversary is trying to get me to do or not do. But yeah, when you have those feelings, when you have that, those nerves come up, when you feel that anxiety, when you feel those things, pay attention to what those feelings are telling you to do. Pay attention to what is actually coming with those feelings. Are those feelings telling you, interesting. It's so saying I have a low network connection. Okay, let me just do something really quick. Hold on a second, guys. Let me just pop off of that. Okay, so this should probably be better. Is that better? Okay, I think it should be. Anyway, let's see. Whoops. There we go. Okay, anyway. So when you're having these concerns about, things that you feel like you're supposed to do, you feel like the Lord's leading you into doing, where are those concerns coming from? And oftentimes you can tell where those concerns are coming from based on what those concerns are telling you to do. If those concerns are telling you, like, run for the hills because the whole world's going to blow up if you do this and everyone's going to hate you and you might even die, and it's like this terror feeling, that is the adversary trying to keep you from doing what the Lord has called you to do. And the way you shut that down is you step into the courage and you do what you know the Lord is telling you to do, regardless of what fear is trying to get you to do. Whatever fear is trying to get you to do or not do, always do the opposite, because that thing rising up in you saying, run for the hills, everyone's going to hate you, everyone's going to blah, blah, blah. That is fear freaking out and terrified of what you're getting ready to deliver and what you're getting ready to help other people step into. If, on the other hand, you feel this thing of, maybe I shouldn't do this, and there's just a peace about it, then that's the Lord. And when that comes, listen to that. Follow the peace. When the peace is saying, maybe this isn't a great idea, that's definitely the Lord. And when the check or the correction is with peace, that's him. But when it's with this anxiety and this fear and this terror and this like, run, everybody's going to hate you, blah, type stuff, that's so the adversary, and don't even entertain it. Like literally, I was sitting here breathing like before I went live, before I hit the live button. And then I just said, you know what, get out of here. Boom, and I just went for it. Anyway, so one of the things I really wanted to touch on is looking deeper. How many of us have ever taken a class on the prophetic and been told, if you see anything bad, don't address it, just prophesy the opposite. Just prophesy the opposite. That can be a good tool and can be a good technique. But when it becomes dangerous is when we are not willing to look deeper, and when we're not willing to look long enough to seek clarity on what it is we're actually seeing. Because the Lord doesn't reveal things like negative things that are going on in someone's life or in their heart or whatever, so that you can be like, ooh, girl, I see what you doing behind the scenes. That's not why he does that. He reveals that to you so that you can know like what's actually happening. And sometimes when we see those things, it's not what we first assume. You may see someone who has a spirit of seduction on them, or a spirit of, perversion, or a spirit of, violence or whatever on them. But then if you look deeper and you actually trust in the Lord and say, Lord, help me understand what I'm seeing, you will realize it's not because that person is operating in some secret sin. It's because of something that may have happened to this person at some point in their life. And what happened when this event took place, like an abuse or whatever, a harassing spirit attached to that person. And for however many years had been harassing that person. And that person will go for ministry. That person will say like, hey, do you see anything? I feel like something's going on. And people will see a spirit of seduction or a spirit of lust or perversion or violence or manipulation or whatever. And then they'll start to prophesy the opposite. Oh, you walk in purity. You know, you walk in just a clean heart and in a clean mind. And not realizing, because they didn't bother to look long enough, that they're not prophesying the opposite. They are speaking the reality of what that person walks in and ignoring the fact that this person has been fighting a secret battle for years that actually isn't very secret, and everyone sees it, yet they misunderstand. So rather than helping that person step out of this thing they've been fighting alone all these years, they just say, you know, the truth, which is you have a pure heart, you walk in purity type stuff. But they're thinking like when they're saying these things, what's in their heart for the person is actually not what they're speaking. Because a lot of the time when we do that, we're thinking, whoa, this person's operating in some pretty dark stuff. When in reality, this pretty dark stuff has been harassing these people. And this revelation comes from experience. Because of abuse that I endured as a child, I had some different things connect and begin harassing me starting at age 5. And at age 5, and people will say things like, oh, well, if it didn't have the legal right to be there, it wouldn't be there. But this is the thing, is that the demonic doesn't operate fairly. They will, if they have a way to connect, they have a way to attach, they will take advantage of it. So if there is something going on and they have a way to weasel in, they will. And that's why it's important that we're discerning and we're willing to actually look long enough to understand. Because when those events took place, as I was a child at 5 years old, a 5-year-old isn't going to just like have the thought, oh, let me do this to operate in a spirit of seduction. You're 5. Those things aren't even here until, you know, something happens to you and you're violated in a way, right? So I, for like 25 years, was battling this thing. I would have weird things happen, like grown men flirting with me when I was like a young child. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, what is happening? And it was all stuff that I knew was not okay. So I wasn't like, woohoo, yay. You know, I was like, ew, old man, get away from me. Like, I'm 10. What are you doing? You know? And then as I started walking with communities that, you know, operated in the supernatural and flow in the spirit and this, that, and the other, then I was like, oh my gosh, I can address these things. And I actually shared a testimony on my wall a couple weeks ago of when I first, you know, the Lord said to me in the middle of a revival meeting, and he said, you need to stand up and you need to say you need to be healed and you need to be set free. And I didn't even fully understand why he was telling me to do this, but I did it. And that's when I first started stepping into this healing and my ability to get out of and be free from these things that had been harassing me. But what's unfortunate is oftentimes, and I'm not just talking about me, I have a lot of friends that I've actually talked about this with. I've had, you know, I know some women who are some mighty, mighty powerful women who flow and operate in just these incredible things in the spirit. Yet when people see them, they say, whoa, 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 she's operating in a spirit of seduction. Do you do a study anytime through the week? I actually will be, yes. Sorry, I was just responding to a comment. Anyhow, so I know some women who just operate and flow in these powerful, just like incredibly, insanely powerful things. But because of things that have happened to them and things that have attached and been harassing them for years, decades, people, when they see them, they see that and then they go, whoa, let me put my arm out so that I can guard my heart from this person, and not be willing to look long enough because I actually want to help them. If you see that stuff, so often people, do all this stuff when really what they need is they need a community to rally around them. They need a community to come and say, hey, I see something's going on and I really want to help you step into freedom. Rather than, whoa, I see something kind of crazy, so I'm just going to judge you and I'm going to even go talk bad about you behind your back and all this stuff. Don't do that. If you see stuff, just continue looking long enough to understand it. And if that means it takes a minute, if that means you're in a prayer line and it takes a second before you can minister to this individual, guess what? That's okay. The Spirit of the Lord knows what it's doing. So don't try to control the Spirit of the Lord. Allow the Spirit of the Lord to flow and allow the Spirit of the Lord to reveal to you what you need to do. And don't worry about trying to, be in control in that moment, but rather be concerned about ministering to people. So that's huge. And also, when that stuff comes up, what happens sometimes when we're not willing to look deep enough is that then people will just lash out at someone. You operate in a spirit of seduction, you Jezebel lady, and it's like, whoa, having no idea that what you're actually doing is traumatizing someone who's been harassed by a spirit because of a trauma that they went through. And that's why, people talk about leaving the church because of offenses. That's some of the stuff that gets people to leave the church, because then you're saying, the Lord showed me that you're doing this and shabariya sadake. Like, no, he didn't. If you bothered to look long enough, you would know what he was showing you was that this person had been victimized and they're desperately crying out for help. And you're shaming them. Let's not do that. Let's operate so powerfully in love. Let's operate so powerfully in forgiveness. Let's operate so powerfully in discernment that type of stuff doesn't happen anymore. Oh, hey girl, how are you? Sorry. And then the other part is forgiveness. So I have obviously been in situations where things like this have happened. And when I've shared some of my testimony, people respond with like, I'm starting to manifest oil. People will respond and say like, wow, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. These people did blah, 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 blah. But actually, when I share my testimony about trials that I've been through, I don't ever share it to be like, look how horrible these people are. Look how horrible that situation is. When I share a testimony, it's about, look at the glory of God. Look at the fact that he is so powerful that he healed me in this situation. That he used this thing that seems so yucky and turned it around for his glory. Look at this thing that the adversary tried to use to shame me or other people, and God used to glorify who he is. That's always the point of a testimony. It's not ever like, oh, I'm so broken and I'm so blah, 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 and I'm the victim and everybody pity me. That's not me. I've been through junk. I've been through crazy junk. But I don't look at myself as a victim. Why? Because I'm more than a conqueror, which means I'm not a victim. I don't even see put my identity in like, oh, I've, look at everything I've come from. I put my identity in Yahweh because that's where my identity comes from. So I know I'm more than a conqueror and all that stuff is beneath my feet. And that's why I'm able to walk in the level of joy that I do. So I just want to make that very, very clear that, I've even had people say, I can't even, deal knowing that you've been through these things. And I'm like, if that's the thing, if that's the case, then you're focusing on the wrong part of the testimony. The part of the testimony to focus on is the glory of Yahweh and what he did in it, And then also, before we go to forgiveness, I want to talk about one other thing real quick. So this past year, or not even just this past year, the past few years have been some of the most difficult that I have ever had. There has been betrayal. There has been, assault. There's been literally like being attacked. There's been, people, there's been abandonment and all of that stuff. But at the same time, these have been the most fruitful years that I can think of in a long time. And why is that? Because through everything that I went through, what it forced me to do was make a decision. Am I going to retreat? Am I going to run away and hide? Or am I going to fix my eyes on Yahweh? And am I going to just run after him with all the full force that I am capable of? And every single time what I chose was to run and run and run after him. Hey, Robert! These last years have just been wild, and you hear people say things like, oh, when it comes to like New Year's time. And I say that because I'm more about following the Hebrew calendar than whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, than all that other stuff. So to me, the new year isn't January 1st. But anyway, but when it comes around that time, people are like, oh, this whatever year was horrible. This next year is going to be my year. But my thing is, these have been the most painful, difficult years, but have also been the best because I've created and cultivated a level of intimacy with the Lord that I would not trade for anything. So all the things that happened, like being kicked out of, an internship I was doing because I was raped and then accused by my pastor of prostitution because of it, and having things like, and the fact that I was raped, and having people spread rumors and lies about me, and then, trying to help people and open people's eyes to things, and having them accuse me of operating in Jezebel because I'm seeing what they're not seeing. And then when it comes out, the person who actually was doing the dark stuff, it comes out and they confess, what they did. And then it's released from the pulpit, but a name isn't given. And then because of the details that were given, people draw the conclusion, oh, it must have been Aaron Michael. And then all of a sudden having these people who I've loved so deeply begin to curse me because they're powerful. They are, co-heirs with the Messiah. So they have spiritual authority. And with that authority, they started cursing me because they misunderstood things and whatever. And all these things had just been boom, 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 one thing after another for like 3 years. But in it, I dove deeper and deeper and deeper into my relationship with Yahweh. So I wouldn't trade those things that happened. And this is where we jump into forgiveness. So we know that scripture says our battle is not against flesh and blood, right? We know that because people say it all the time. But it's one thing to say something, and it's something completely different to live it. When you live something, sometimes you don't even say it out loud. Sometimes it's just who you are and it's just what you do. I don't say every single day, I am Aaron Michael Beaver. I don't make that declaration every day, but I am. That's who I am, So you don't have to always, it's not just about what you're saying, it's about what you're living, right? So knowing that our battle is not against flesh and blood, what that means is that when people come against us, when people hurt us, when your pastor looks you in the face and accuses you of prostitution because a man violated you, and it doesn't make sense to your pastor why you would be healed from the trauma so quickly. 3 days, by the way, after I was assaulted by this man who had nothing to do with my church, was completely separate, I forced myself to go to the internship that I was doing. And I didn't want to. Nothing in me wanted to go to that thing. I felt like I was a zombie. Like I was just walking around, like I couldn't even smile. And if you know me, that's a big deal if I'm not, smiling. And oh, of course, thank you. That blesses my heart, you saying that. So anyway, so I walk into the church and I'm sitting outside, and I remember I was sitting in the car and I was trying to stop the steady stream of tears that were pouring down my face, because I had literally just been very violently raped 3 days prior. And so I just had like this steady stream of tears pouring down my face. And so I'm walking, or I'm sitting in my car, I'm trying to coax myself to seem okay, because I had been told that I wasn't allowed to be there sad because I shift an environment, and if I'm sad, then everybody will be sad. And so I have to be happy, and I can't just pretend, but I had to actually be happy. And so I'm sitting there in the car looking at myself in the mirror, trying to get a smile on my face. Hey, Alicia! Trying to like force a smile on my face, but I couldn't. I had just been so violently raped just 3 days prior that my whole everything just felt dead. And so finally I was like, if I don't go in now, I'm not going to go in. So I need to just go in. And I'm going to get in trouble for being sad, but oh well, whatever. Anyway, so I walk in there, and I was surrounded by people that I knew and I was close to. And because of what had happened, you know, the presence of a man was making me very jumpy. And there was one person who did know what happened, because I had reached out to his wife right after it happened, and as I was on my way home, so he knew. And so he walks up, and I'm kind of like in this kind of a posture, you know, very closed in. And he walks up, and as he approached, I jumped, and he goes, "I'm so sorry," because he understood what that was about. And he said to me, "I just want to let you know you're okay. And I want to let you know I see you." And I'm like, I just nodded because I couldn't even speak. I still felt so dead inside. So then we would always do worship first thing in this internship I was doing. First thing in the morning, we'd do worship. And as I said, it had been a very violent assault, and it was only 3 days prior. So standing was painful. So I was sitting at my desk, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like very closed off like this, and I couldn't close my eyes. And I was mad. Y'all, I was mad because at this point I was walking with a deep, connection with the Lord. So I was like, how did that happen? How did this happen, right? And so I'm like forcing myself to engage in worship, because one of the most beautiful things my mom taught me growing up was when you want to not be in an atmosphere with the Lord, it is because you need to be there. So because of how desperately I did not want to be there, I knew I had to. So I'm trying to force myself into worship. And they were singing the song, "His Banner Over Me Is Love." So they're singing, "I am my beloved's and he is mine." And I'm trying to engage in worship, but I couldn't sing. I couldn't even form my mouth to speak words. So I just started praying. But what I want to be clear about is that my prayers weren't like, "Oh Lord, you are so sovereign," and stuff like that. Literally what I said, and forgive my language, if you have small children around, cover their ears. I'm getting ready to say an actual swear word. But what I said is, "I'm so fucking pissed off." I said, "Are you kidding me? I'm so effing mad." And I was saying this because I had just been violently raped by someone 3 days prior. And I was so angry. How could this happen? I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm like, "Hey, Terry." And I was just like, "I'm so effing mad," and I said it 7 times. And the 8th time that I said it, I heard the audible voice of the Lord say, "So am I, and the adversary will pay for this." And in that moment, I realized, oh my gosh, the difference between what just happened 3 days ago and what has happened in my past is I know who I am. I know whose I am, and I know the authority that I have. And I was like, oh, heck no. And so I was like, this is not going to go down the same way where I go to a depression and this, that, and the other. No, I'm done. So I started engaging in worship. And I was still, dealing with the emotional stuff, but I'm pushing through it. So I'm sitting there and I still have my eyes open, but I am engaged in the spirit. And I start trying to force myself to just think within my mind, I am my beloved's and he is mine. I am my beloved's and he is mine. And I'm just trying to force myself to engage in this. And all of a sudden, as I'm saying that, I hear like this chorus of angels open up around me, and they audibly begin singing, "You are your beloved's and he is yours." And I started weeping, and then I heard Yahweh say, "I am my beloved's and she is mine." And in that moment, I jumped to my feet. I threw my arms out. I throw my head back, and I start declaring, "I am my beloved's and he is mine." And it was like this gorgeous duet that we were singing together. As like that, the angel chorus was like singing a harmony. It was so beautiful. And in the moment that I hit my feet, this weight, this tangible weight, was lifted from the bottom of my feet, and it rose up through my whole body and out the top of my head. And the trauma from that violent attack that I had experienced was immediately lifted off of me. And I was immediately healed from that trauma. And it was 3 days later. 3 days later. I think that's pretty significant. Anyway, so afterward, I started thinking, okay, like what the Lord said to me was the adversary. He was telling me, "Hey, Mike," he was telling me that the adversary was going to pay for what he had done. He didn't say that guy who did that to you is going to burn. I'm going to, burn him in the fiery pits of hell. No, that's not what he said. He said the adversary. So I begin to press in. I begin to say, okay, Lord, help me understand what this means. Help me understand what this means. And so that was anyway. And so then I went and I spoke to the rest of the interns like the next day and told them what happened, and like, God is so good because he healed me in 3 days, and he's showing me that, what I need to do, as far as like addressing things in the spirit around this type of stuff, and how other, people need to know that he can do this and he will do this, and showing me, how to address these things like in the spirit, right? And I was expecting people to be like, "Wow, praise God, hallelujah." That wasn't the response I got. I actually got in trouble for sharing it with the group because I was told now I have to minister to everyone by my pastor. Now I have to minister to everyone who knows what happened to you. And if you had maybe shared it later or said it was something that happened a long time ago, but because you said it literally happened 3 days ago, everyone's freaking out and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, was way confused. And then later when the program was reintroduced, I was first told that the reason I wasn't going to be allowed to come back was because of financial stuff. But when I really pressed, finally, what he said to me was, "When it comes down to it, I just don't trust you anymore because of what happened." And I was like, "Because of the rape, you don't trust me anymore." And he was like, "Well, if that's what you want to call it," kind of thing, like basically like saying, and what it boiled down to is they didn't believe me because of how quickly the Lord healed me from it. And guess what? That's okay. And the night after I had that conversation where, with the prostitution accusations were made, I was heading home, and I was crying so hard. I got in my car, I'm punching my steering wheel, and I'm sitting at the stoplight that's right down the street, and I'm crying so hard, punching my steering wheel saying, "Lord, what is happening? How can this be? How? I don't even understand." And I was so just, heartbroken and devastated that it wouldn't have been safe for me to drive in the condition I was in because I could barely see, and literally was relocated from that stoplight that's probably like 30 miles from my house to my driveway. Yet I was still so broken in that moment that when it happened, I wasn't like, wow, Lord, this is awesome, which is how I normally would respond to something like that. I was just like, thank you, because I can drive. And I just sat there and just sobbed in my driveway for like an hour. Then I went up to my room and I said, Lord, I don't understand. I'm so confused. I'm so broken. In order for me to get past this, in order for me to even survive tonight, I need you to show me everyone involved in this entire situation through your eyes. I need to see the situation the way you see this situation. And he showed me literally everyone and everything through his eyes, including, get this, the man who had done that to me, the man who had raped me. The Lord showed me this man through his eyes. And, the other people who were involved, the people that I got, kicked out of the thing, he showed me them through his eyes. And immediately I said, Lord, I forgive them. Because what I saw, like I was seeing them through his eyes. Meaning the guy who did that to me, what I saw was devastating, was this guy who, and the Lord revealed to me that he was one of his children. And he had been so deceived and had all this stuff going on. And what I saw in the spirit was him literally strapped down to this like slab with these straps that were literally boiling. And these demonic things were torturing him. They're electrocuting him. They're burning him with like irons. His eyes had been gouged out and he was clawing his way, trying to get out. And every time he thought he was about to get out, that something else would slam him down. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is in a level of spiritual bondage and darkness that like, oh my gosh, that's intense. So what did I start doing for him and everyone else in that situation? I started praying and I started declaring freedom for them. So that scripture we were talking about our battle not being against flesh and blood. Our battle is against powers and principalities of darkness, which means the way we win those battles is by helping people step into freedom and these powers and principalities not having a grasp on these people anymore. When people come against you and people come to try and hurt you, when these attacks come at you from different places and different people, what it's important to understand is that it's not these people that are horrible. What it means is that there's something going on that has manipulated them spiritually to think, oh, this is what I need to do. This is a grand idea to attack this person. And when you understand who you are and the authority that you walk in, you will then understand that what's actually happening is the adversary is trying to pit you against each other. He's trying to get you to say, oh, this person who hurt me, what a jerk. I just can't stand them. They're a blah, 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 blah. And then the adversary can sit back and just laugh at the fact that you are now acting out his will. And literally sitting there saying like, wow, do you see how well that person tore down that other person? Because the adversary doesn't have the same power or authority or strength that we have. So we can actually tear people down more than he can if we operate in that. So when we see those things coming up and we see an opportunity to just slash somebody open, when we say, oh, heck no, I'm not operating in that, and you start declaring every blessing that heaven has for that person over them, and you start declaring freedom. And rather than focusing on how hurt you are and how all this other stuff, and you just start calling out their future, their destiny, their identity. You are a co-heir with Christ. You're calling their spirit to come forth. You're calling their spirit to rise up. And you are more than a conqueror. You walk in the full manifestation of sonship. And I just declare these blessings over these people. That is how you win those battles. Because when you do that, what happens is that the grasp that the adversary has on that person that has manipulated them into doing those things is loosened and is released. That person's walking in freedom. And the thing that our actual battle is against, the powers and principalities, is shamed. And that person is healed and set free. And that is how we win those battles. And it's not something, you have to do where you have to go publicly and say, this person, so-and-so who did X, Y, and Z to me, I'm calling blah, 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 blah for it. No. Those things are the things that you do in the spirit, and you declare these things out. And it's not anything that has to be public unless the Lord leads in that. And if it's the Lord's leading in that, you can do it every single time. But if it's not, just make sure you're constantly checking your heart and understanding why you're doing and saying the things that you're doing and saying. But yeah, that's what it means. And so for me, when I say that I love people, that I love all people and every person, regardless of who you are and what you've done, it's because when people have hurt me, I ask the Lord to let me see them through his eyes so that I can love them. And that doesn't mean that I want to have, communication or relationship with all of these people. Like the person I was just talking about, that the guy who did that, I don't ever want to talk to him again. I don't need to ever have communication with him again, because that would be incredibly unhealthy. And there's no reason for me to ever deal with him again. But I can promise you that I will see that man in heaven, because what the adversary was trying to accomplish, I will not ever let him accomplish. So, yeah. So anyway, there's that. And then forgiveness goes hand in hand with that. The ability to forgive people isn't just to, like, people say, well, I don't want them to get away with it. Well, it's not about letting, them get away with it. It's about, one, releasing yourself from the bondage of that pain. And it's also about actually winning the actual battle that isn't against flesh and blood. It's not about the person. It's about their spirit, and it's about their soul, and it's about making sure that the adversary pays. And also understanding that, and this is something pretty, controversial that kind of bothers some people, but that's okay, whatever. The adversary can be much more of a sheepdog that nips at you, pushing you closer and closer and closer to the Lord, or something that draws you away, and it's our decision how we use him. When he, tries to come and freak you out and say, oh, boogity boogity, look what I'm doing. Do you go, oh no, I'm going to run and hide under my covers and isolate from the world and and try and figure it out myself and oh no? Or do you say, Father, help, Daddy, and run to the Lord? I am living proof that every time the adversary tries to rear his ugly little stupid head, if you press into the Lord, there's not a single thing that the adversary literally is such a loser, you guys. Like, he already has lost. He already has. So just keep running back to the Father. Keep running back to Yahweh. And one thing that I've learned and that I've come to the ability to do over the last couple of years is to stay in constant fellowship with Yahweh. And I'll go into that testimony another time. But it's something that's an important part of the ministry that I walk in. What my goal is to kind of work myself out of a job. My goal is to help people understand that they can reach a level of intimacy with the Lord so deep that they don't have to go to other people to hear from him. They just go to him. And that's what I've learned over these last several years. And I've come to a place where I am constantly not just seated in heavenly places, but aware of it and intentionally and very present there. and one in heavenly places, so multiple places, which I have to go soon because I'm actually, one of the classes that I help teach with about engaging the heavenly realms, I'm going to be late too. Anyway, but today isn't my official day to co-lead. It's not till tomorrow, so it's okay. But anyway, so I stay in a place in the heavenly realms where I am in the Father's arms and my head is rested on his chest, and I'm just sitting there allowing him to hold me like a little girl. And so when I have a question or a doubt, or I'm concerned or worried about anything, literally all I do is, like I was saying, I'm laying with my head on his chest. All I do is I just lift my head up and I look at his face. And his response will either be, or, and obviously this is yes, and this is no. So if I'm like, ooh, can I do this? Should I do this? And he goes, then I'm like, oh, okay, nope, sorry. But if he's like, then I'm like, yeah, I'm down, I'm in. And that's something that has helped me so much, and also giving me a huge level of peace in the last several years. And as I was talking about, how difficult these last several years have been, it's wild because a lot of the time, the mindset that we have a lot in the Western church is if you're facing hardships or trials or difficulties, then clearly you're doing something wrong. Clearly you're doing blah, 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 and you're off track. And what has happened is whenever I'm looking at what's happening in the natural and I'm like, what the heck is all of this? What am I missing, Lord? And he will say to me, when I first got here to New Mexico, the situation I had just come out of was pretty intense. So I was literally like, oh, my hair is so weird right now. Anyway, so I was literally like, Lord, what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? And what he says to me every time I do that, every time I say that to him, what he says to me is, Joseph, had you not been betrayed by your brothers and sold into slavery, you would have not made it to Potiphar's house. Had you not made it to Potiphar's house, you wouldn't have been able to be falsely accused. Had you not been falsely accused, you would not have made it to jail. And had you not made it to the jail, you never would have made it to the palace. Joseph, you're right on track. And I'm like, every time, it just gives me that push that I need to be like, okay, I trust you. I trust you, Lord, regardless of what things look like in the natural. Because I'm seated with you and I am so surrendered to you. I trust you and I know that what you have for me is good. And I made a commitment within my spirit a long time ago that was, regardless of what things look like, regardless of what it takes, I will just be surrendered to you, Lord. So sometimes things look a little crazy, but just keep your peace. Know that he loves you. Know that what he has for you is so much better than anything we could ever possibly fathom for ourselves. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and then I'm gonna jump off, but I was talking to a friend the other day about situations where like you really care about someone, but you realize they're not the person for you, right? And I was so proud of this girl because she said, I realized that this guy wasn't the guy for me because of X, Y, and Z and what the Lord's doing in my life and our different paths. So I had to let him go, and it hurts. It hurts really bad. And I was like, wow, I'm so proud of you, because what that meant was she gave up her best because of the promise of God's best. And his best is always so much better than anything we could ever possibly fathom or try to conjure up for ourselves, right? So then I just want to also, on that note, announce I'm doing a women's group. And the women's group is called Preparing Hadassah. Any women can be a part of that group if you are just wanting more of the Lord and you're going, hard for all the things that he has for you, and you're ready to just like dive deep and get into the deeper things of him and understanding who you are and what you're called to, or if you already know, just like walking it out, that type of stuff. It's the link should be in the description of this video. So ladies, please go on in, click the link. It's the Preparing Hadassah link. There are 3 questions to answer before joining. And then also, you're encouraged to do a trade. There's not like a membership fee for the Preparing Hadassah group. It's not like a monthly reoccurring thing. But one of the big things that we'll be talking about is the trading floors and understanding what trading is. And so there's a link on there where you can go and like do the trade for the group, just to help you, really kind of sow into it so that you can fully reap the benefits of what's happening in it. And there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff going on in that group. We're going to be doing, times of fellowship. There's also going to be teachings, Q&A time, and other community events, and it's going to be based in the Facebook group, so it doesn't matter where you are, you can jump on in and be a part of it. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be really, really awesome. But anyway, going back to what my friend and I were talking about, just being surrendered to the Lord, knowing that his best is always so much better than anything we could ever come up with, and knowing I will not ever settle for what I think would be the best. I say this a lot. I don't want good ideas. I don't want a good plan. I want God ideas, and I want his plan. So anyway, I love you guys. I'm so glad I did this. It's so funny because I had all this anxiety and coming on when I first started. My hands were trembling, all this stuff. And I'm really glad that I just pushed through and did it. So anyway, and the last thing that I want to say is that we are all so incredibly loved by the Father. When you think about what the scripture says about how for the joy set before him, Yeshua endured the cross. It says he despised the shame of the cross because of the joy set before him, which is us. And that word despise, it's funny when you really dig into what that word means, we think that it means he hated it. He just thought it was the worst thing ever. But actually, if you dig into that word, what the actual word meant was he thought nothing of it. He just paid no regard to it for the joy set before him that was us. And what that means is that in that moment where he's already broken, he's sweating like blood and water and all of this stuff, for the joy set before him that is your face. I wouldn't have guessed that you were nervous. Thank you, Shane. Oh, thank you, Bonnie. Yay. But yeah, for the joy set before him, it was your face, Bonnie. Tina Marie, it was your face. It was my face set before him in that moment. He said, oh, for Bonnie, absolutely. For Bonnie, being marred on the cross is nothing, because I know that one day she'll be seated with me next to you, Father. Well, yeah, let's do this. So remember that you are the joy set before the Lord. You, Ari, are the joy set before the Lord. And that in that moment when he took his last breath and said, it is done, he was thinking about you, and there was so much joy knowing these people will soon be seated with us. So absolutely, I'll do it. Ain't no thing to bring Bonnie into the kingdom. Anyway, I love you guys. Take care. Actually, we need to talk about that phrase. There are a lot of things that we say that just come out, and then you think about it. It literally says, to cast your cares upon the Lord. So then why do we say take care? Don't take care. Cast your cares. Anyway, love you guys. We'll chat again soon. Mwah. Bye.